there has been power, corruption and greed, fear, hate, torture, massacres, and the brainwashing that goes with religious fundamentalism.
Obviously, I'm very well aware of the biblical prophecies that specify that a certain person will come before the second coming of Jesus Christ. And if what I have found is correct, I can show Jesus Christ, Jesus the Anointed One of Heaven. It's a star image, along with all the rest of the stories. So assuming I am correct, and I'm pretty sure I am, because it's just too complex to be wrong, then I am the one who comes before Jesus Christ. And that is the Antichrist, before Christ. So that's sort of a bit of a dilemma there, really, because the Antichrist is meant to be something horrible and nasty and bringing all sorts of death and destruction, but we do that ourselves anyway. You don't need any supernatural presence to wreak havoc on planet Earth. So I just see myself as someone who can show the lie behind what a lot of people are calling the truth.
To understand Nick, you need to know his background. Nick Addey had his own company between 1983 and 1990, where he constructed unique pieces of furniture for private buyers. But within 2 years, his life changed completely. First, he sold his business and traveled for a whole year.
When I was about, I suppose, 10 or 11, I was given a New English Bible because we had to have one at school and for our religious studies. And I suppose the teachers were quite good. They made it interesting. Some of the stories were exciting, some were pretty naff. But anyway, some of it tickled the boys' imagination, I suppose. But to say I was interested, it wouldn't be true at all. Until literally 4 years ago, no, let's go back 5 years ago, when I was trying to find out what was really going on in the world. It occurred to me that a lot of people go searching for this, that and the other, and so I tried my little bit of searching, and it started with the Bible, because it's held up to be one of the origins of spiritual welfare, if you like. And I suppose that's what I was interested in, trying to sort my soul out. So I picked it up, read a few bits, decided it was basically rubbish, totally unreadable, very boring, and if you managed to stay awake through 4 pages, you were doing pretty well. So I put it down again. I decided, no, if that's what was involved, it wasn't for me. I go looking elsewhere. But where? I hadn't the faintest idea where to look. So I asked. I just asked the consciousness of the world, if you like, because that's all I could define it as, if something might show me the way. And it did.
Whoa! Here we go. It's actually quite warm. Yeah, relatively speaking.
What happened when Nick returned from traveling? First of all, a relationship with a French girl made a great impact on him. Second, he met a German man.
Yes, thanks to a friend of mine, York, a German, an amazing character, artist, philosopher, studier of life, but a spiritual absentee, if you like. He'd point me in the direction I wasn't intending to go at all. We spent a lot of time together running around the back roads of West Cork looking for standing stones and ring forts and things, which was another of his theories. And after a few years, 2 or 3 years of this, he pointed to a particular star book and said, that's the story of Adam and Eve.
What was the Adam and Eve story? Again, I didn't really think much about it. Just in the next few days, I didn't think much about it. And then I went down with a cold, which is pretty unusual for me. And I was in bed for a day, and I couldn't do much the next day apart from potter around the place. And I found an old star chart. Now this is a 20-year-old thing at least, no, probably more, 30-year-old star chart that I never really looked at. It's one of these that revolves, so you can see the progress of the stars through the night sky. I just happen to have it with me, which I doubt is a coincidence now. Anyway, so I was there just thinking, not being able to do very much. So I got this out and sort of worked around and saw how one constellation could come up in the evening as another one goes down. I thought, oh yeah, you could make a story out of this.
And so during my illness, when I could do nothing apart from think and occasionally walk around, this got a hold on me and just wouldn't let me go, or I wouldn't let it go, one or the other. And I then started to look for myself at the real sky, because looking at a star chart's no good really. Yes, I suppose if you pan the camera around you'll get a pretty good idea of why I moved. It's a beautiful place, quiet, and I needed the space and quietness that England couldn't give. I mean, I lived in a nice place in England, but there wasn't that freedom that I felt my mind needed. The space, the quiet. I didn't know what I needed it for, but I just knew I had to have this total peace and quiet and be with nature as much as possible. No, fortunately, as an offshoot from my travels, I realised that if I rent my house out, I can exist without having to work. And I can't go out to dinner very often or run a car, but I can exist quite nicely. And that's what I did.